And you may be seated. Today's sermon is just going to be a little bit different. For those of you that are normally are part of our church, if you're new this morning, I think the more I talk and the more we get into this morning, you'll understand a little bit about what we're talking about. I need you to do something, and it's going to make some of you really uncomfortable. It's not a big thing, but for some of you, you're too cool for school, and I know. I'm talking to men at the moment, all right? But I need everybody in the room to have a pen and a card. If you came in this morning, you got a bulletin. That card is in that bulletin. If you did not, our guys are going to come forward, and they're going to be passing baskets full of pens and cards. Every person in the room who's 12 years old and older needs a card and a pen. Everybody, even for those of you that are really, really cool. I know you're super cool. And I know you maybe normally don't take notes, and I'm not going to ask you to take notes this morning, but I am going to ask you to write some things down. And it's going to be really important that everybody in the room has a card and a pen. If you don't have a card and a pen, basically what you're saying is, Marty, I don't care about anything you have to say. I don't love God. I don't believe in God. I hate puppies. It's just really important that everybody has a card and a pen this morning. Okay? And I hope that you'll do that, and we'll get to that in just a moment. It probably was like any other morning for this particular church. Maybe there was a little bit of a buzz because there was a guy that was going around and he was doing some pretty incredible things. And he was saying some pretty incredible things. And he was moving around. And as people gathered that day to get ready to go to church, probably some conversation over breakfast was, I wonder if he'll be at our church today. It would be really cool if he was our church because he does some pretty amazing things. And if he's at our church today, then, wow, church is probably not going to be very boring. And at this particular Sunday, at this particular place, at this particular time, when this group of people gathered for their normal time of church, he did show up. And he came and he did the normal things that he did. He did some pretty amazing things, said some even more amazing things. In Luke chapter 4, Dr. Luke gives us the account of Jesus showing up at a church. And I want to read it to you this morning. It's found in, like I said, in Luke chapter 4, and this is what it says. It says, Then Jesus went to Capernaum, a town in Galilee, and taught there in the synagogue every Sabbath day. And when you read that, I really want you to read that really slow. Jesus went to the Sabbath, on the Sabbath, went to the synagogue, and he taught. He did that every Sunday. Well, not Sunday. He did that every Saturday. There, too, the people were amazed at his teaching, for he spoke with authority. And once he was in the synagogue, a man possessed by a demon, an evil spirit, began shouting at Jesus, Go away! Why are you interfering with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God. I told you it wasn't a typical Sunday. Jesus cut him short. Be quiet. Come out of the man, he ordered. At that, the demon threw the man to the floor as the crowd watched. Then it came out of him without hurting him any further. Amazed, the people exclaimed, What authority and power this man's words possess. Even evil spirits obey him, and they flee at his command. The news about Jesus spread through every village in the entire region. Now, there's a couple of things I want to remind you of from this passage of Scripture. The first one is this. Jesus went to church. And he went to church every week. This statement, this truth, has to do something in our heart. We're just in Luke chapter 4. And by the way, if you don't know, we're working our way through the book of Luke. And we started in January. And I know it's almost June, and we're just in chapter 4. In fact, we skipped 2 chapters, and we're still just in chapter 4. And this is the third story that we have in Luke chapter 4. And yet again, we have Luke telling us that Jesus went to church. Every Sabbath, he went to church. Now, in this particular story, not only did Jesus go to church, somebody else went to church. The devil went to church. And the devil goes to church every Sunday. And the third thing that jumps out at me in this passage is not that Jesus went to church and not that the devil goes to church, but that the people were amazed. And it doesn't surprise me that there were people who were amazed. But what surprises me and what catches my attention when I read this passage of Scripture is what they were amazed about. They were not amazed that evil went to church. They were not amazed that a demon-possessed man was in church. They were not amazed that evil existed. They were not amazed that evil spoke out for everybody to hear. They were not amazed that evil was physically damaging this man. They were not amazed by any of that. What were they amazed about? The power of Jesus. That's what they were amazed about. Now, it is my guess that what you need in your life is not more evil. You don't need more examples of evil. You don't need more examples of failure. You don't need more examples of being powerless. You do not need more examples of hopelessness. You do not need more examples of not knowing what to do. You do not need more examples of trying to get more lost. Am I right? This is not what we need. This is not what we're looking for. In fact, that's why we gather at a place like this on a Sunday morning, is because we're looking for the power of something, right? We may not be to the point where we're ready to look for the power of Jesus, but we're looking for the power of something, because something needs to change in my life, because the way that I'm doing life and the way things are going right now and the way the world is going, things are just really confusing. So what I need more than anything is I need some power of Jesus in my life. This morning's sermon is different. It's primary to those of you who claim, first of all, you claim Jesus as your Lord and Savior. And second of all, you claim Community Church at Anthem as your church. And I know that that's not everybody in the room. I know some of you are very new and you're very fresh and you're still trying to decide if Community Church Anthem is going to be your church. And for you, you can treat this morning like a reality TV show. You're just going to kind of get to look in on the living room while you're trying to decide if you want to be a part of the family or not. But really what I'm going to do this morning is have a family talk. And talk about where we're going as a church. Looking forward down the future of what that might look like. But before we do that, we need to celebrate a little bit. We are in our 4th year. It will be 5-year anniversary will be in January. Since we started meeting and gathering and establishing a church and Community Church at Anthem. And look around the room. Did you look around the room? Can you look around the room? All right. The first 9:30 service we had 42 people at it. And we counted everybody twice. We're going to make it as a church. 80% of church plants fail after 5 years. Restaurants and churches have a lot in common. But we're going to make it, and that's something that we need to celebrate. Our community, the community of Anthem and our nearby neighborhoods, we need a church. We need a solid place where the gospel is taught and where the power of Jesus is demonstrated. And so we're going to make it, and we need to celebrate that because a lot of churches have these kind of family meetings, and they're trying to figure out how they're going to make it. How are they going to keep paying the bills? How are they going to keep doing those kinds of things? And that's not where we're at. We're at an incredible spot because we get to talk about and we get to experiment with what it means to be better, not just what it means to survive. And so that's exciting. Really, what we're doing is in our first 5 years, and just to give you a little bit of church lingo, because I know you spend all of your week thinking about church, right? Here's a little bit of church lingo. In church land, you're a church plant for your first 5 years. And then after your 5th year, you become a real church, so to speak. You're no longer a church plant. So in a very real sense, what we're doing is we're moving from being a church plant to being a church. And that's happened over even the past year or so. You know, I spent the first couple of years telling people we're new. Can't really do that anymore because we're not so new, especially in Vegas. If you're 5 years old in Vegas, man, it's time to tear everything down and build it again, right? And that's basically what we're about to do. So more on that in a minute. I normally don't use notes, but I'm going to use notes this morning because I really do want to say the right things this morning. We are moving from a church plant to that sounded horrible. Like other mornings, I don't want to say the right things. No, I'm just a little bit more nervous this morning is what I'm trying to say. This is what we're about because I want to put some of your hearts at a little bit of ease. What we're about to do and what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to improve who we are, not change who we are. And I think that's incredibly important for us to understand. That we're going to improve who we are. We're not going to change who we are. Well, who are we, Marty? What do you mean by that? Well, again, in church land, if I may just educate you a little bit in church land. In church land, you usually have a DNA in your church. And it is either evangelistic in nature or it is discipleship in nature. Now, I know if you've been in church for a long time and you understand what those two words mean, you're going like, oh, we have to be both. Well, if you're going to be successful and you're going to do the things that you need to be, you can't do both 100%. You've got to decide, are we an evangelistic church or are we a discipleship church? And we have started from day one being a discipleship church. And the reason that we're a discipleship church is because I'm a discipleship person. That's my heart, that's my passion, that's who I am. The calling that God's placed on my life is to pastor people. And my goal and all of the things that we're talking about this morning is not so we can double the attendance and double the budget and all that kind of stuff, because that's not my heart. My heart is your heart, and hopefully you'll understand that as we talk through this morning. But we are a discipleship church. Our goal is to help you go from point A to point B to point C to point D. It's to move us down the road of what it means to be a fully devoted follower of Jesus, or as we like to say, living the truth of Jesus in everyday life. And so we're not an evangelistic church, so we're not about smoke and mirrors and all those kinds of things. That's not what we do. And so we're honing in on that. So we're not changing that. Some of you have been a part of a church in the past that changed. They went from a discipleship church to an evangelistic church, and you know what that's like. And I'm just letting you know that that's not what we're doing. We're just going to improve what we're doing. We're not changing who we are. So why do we need to improve? I mean, because here's the deal, Mara, you look around, the room is full and everything is good and I really like the way things are. Why do we need to improve things, or why do we need to change anything? Why would we need to do that? Well, there's a couple of reasons. One reason is this, is that we're commanded to. We're commanded to make disciples. We're commanded to reach as many people as we can reach. The second reason we need to do this is because you believe in being better. You value that. I know you. You wouldn't live where you live. You wouldn't live in the kind of homes you live in. You wouldn't drive the kind of cars you drive. You wouldn't have the kind of careers that you have if you didn't believe in better. None of you are looking for a third-rate school for your children. Right? None of you are excited about going out and purchasing a beat-up clunker. That's not what you do. So you value getting better. You value getting better in every aspect of your life. And as a church, we need to value the same thing. We need to be constantly getting better. Here's another reason why we've got to improve. It's because we're losing. We're losing the battle. We're losing big time. And what I mean I'm talking Christianity in general. We're losing. I'm going to give you some numbers. I'll let you see some things. In 2007, this report just came out this week, actually. CNN did a report, Fox did a report, all kind of people did reports about it. In 2007, about 78% of the people in the United States claim themselves to be Christian. Now, I hope you understand that 78% of the people in our country are not Christians, okay? In other words, what that means is when they have to fill out a form and you have to check religion, they check Christian instead of being a Muslim. They check Christian instead of being Jewish. You understand? That's what it's going. But of those, about 78% that say that they're Christian, 26% in 2007 consider themselves evangelicals. And you may not know what that means, but if you like coming to church here and you like the style and you like what we're doing, then you are an evangelical, okay? So that's the kind of church that we are. Catholic was about 24%, mainline denomination, Presbyterian, Methodist, Lutheran, those kind of denominations, 18%. Nuns. Now, nuns is becoming a whole different group because nuns is the thing, like none. Religion, you check none. You don't have one. Okay? So that's what's coming. So in 2007, this was the numbers. This is the numbers as of last week. Evangelicals have dropped. Still the first one, but have dropped from 26 to 25%. Nuns have went from 16% to 23%. Among millennials, people about 15 to 30, today a third of millennials check none. So 1 out of every 3. Catholics are down from 24 to 21. And by the way, if it wasn't for the enormous amount of immigration coming in from Mexico, that number would be way, way smaller. Mainline denominations are in trouble. They're on life support. Most of them are on life support. It's down to only 14%. But the reason I put this up here is to see which one, only one of them had growth. Do you see that? Do you see which one had growth? There's decline in every one except for one, and the one that had growth grew by, 7%? We're losing. We're losing. So we got to be better. We got to be different. We got to do things different. We can't keep doing what we're doing because in a lot of ways what we're doing is not working. But in a lot of ways what we're doing is working. We're going to make it, right? We're a church and we're going to make it. It's not the end of the world yet. But it's coming. And I don't know when the end of the world's going to be, but I do know it's one day closer. But we're losing. So those are some of the reasons that we're going to do. So you've got a card this morning. I'm going to try to do this morning and give you some information about some of the things that we have on the table that we're discussing and that we're investigating and that we're going to begin experimenting with. And at the same time, because I am a pastor, and at the same time because I care way more about your heart than I do any physical organization. I'm going to try to pastor you a little bit as we go through it. That's why this was so important. Everybody's got your card and your pen, okay? I'm not going to ask you any questions that you don't know. Everybody knows the answers to the questions, okay? So here's what I want you to do. Number 1, in that first long blank, I want you to write your address. Whatever your address is. Mine's on the screen. Mine's 1107 Winter Storm Drive, Henderson, Nevada, 89052. So I want you to write your address. I don't necessarily know what your career is. I don't necessarily know what your hopes and dreams are. I don't necessarily know what your deep, dark secrets are. I don't necessarily know what your deep, dark fears are. Although, since I am many of your pastors, I do know the answers to some of those questions. The most important mission that you have is your address. There is nothing more important than your home. Nothing. Your career is not more important. Your football team's not more important. Your self-esteem is not more important. the most important thing that you have is your home. I'm not talking about your house. You understand? I'm not talking about your house. I'm talking about your home. Where you live. The people in your family. There is nothing more important than your address. It is the most important address on the planet to you. Psychologists tell us that the sweetest thing that we will ever hear is our name. Because you're important. So you got to take care of your home. You must take care of your home. Dads, you may not lead anything, but God commands you to lead your home. And we have to do that. It's the way God has set it up. It's the way God's ordained it. And when Jesus went to church, I fully believe that he talked about home. And the reason I know that he talked about home is because he loved the book of Deuteronomy. And Deuteronomy is all about home. Lots of Deuteronomy talks about taking care of your children and doing things so that your children's children will walk with God. Now, Jesus went to the church and he talked about home, but so does the devil, remember? That evil goes to church. And here's what Satan does. He takes everything that's good in life and he twists it. He takes everything that's good in life and he twists it. And so your address is the most important thing there is in your life. And he will twist that and make you think it's the only thing that matters. He'll twist it to the point where he says, it's all about me. Everything's about me. Well, I don't like the music. I don't like the color of the curtains. I don't like this. I don't like that. I don't like this. I don't like that. I don't like this. I don't like that. Your home is the most important thing. And Satan's going to take that and twist it, and he will make you so selfish that everything you think is about you. And we have to guard against that. While my family is the most important people I pastor is Lisa, Madison, and Amelia. It's not just about us. Because Jesus didn't say to the disciples, go ye therefore and take care of your homes. He said, go into the world and make disciples. So here's the question. The blank outside of the one is this. I'm going to ask you 3 yes and no questions today. And they're yes and no. We're going to go a little courtroom on you today, okay? Can't write maybe. Can't write a question mark. You have to write yes or no. Now I want you to listen carefully before you answer. I'm not asking you, are you doing everything in your home perfectly? Because that just means we all write no. I'm not asking you, is there improvement for you to make in your home? We would all have to write yes, okay? So listen carefully. What I'm asking you is, are you, to the best of your ability at this point, adequately providing spiritual formation for your family? Now, before you answer, let me give you some examples. If you're allowing your 13-year-old to decide whether or not he comes to the church, your answer is no. If you never have a conversation about God in your home, the answer is no. If you attend church once every 6 or 7 weeks, the answer is no. If you're not in a small group, the answer is no. If you don't have your children going to camp, being in youth group, those kinds of things, the answer is no. What's your answer? I want you to write. Yes or no? Are you doing everything that you know to do at this particular point in time? Not asking you if you can make improvements. We know I'll make improvements. Not asking you if you arrive. No emphasis of arrive. Are you doing adequately what it takes to build spiritual formation at your address? Now, the second address is this. I want everybody to write 2333 Canyon Retreat Drive. I know Principal Mike knows this address. 2333 Canyon Retreat Drive. That is where you're sitting. This is the address of the place that we meet. Now, church is the people. You are the church. And we don't have to fight that as much as other places because we don't have a building. So none of us are in building worship at this point. So we're just able to build community. But this is an important address. This is an incredibly important address. Let me tell you why this is an important address. It's not because it's a school, so got to separate the school and your kids come to school. That's we just covered that one. This is for us as we gather to worship as a church on a weekly basis. Here's some things that we need to be reminded of, or maybe you need to hear for the first time. The church is the bride of Christ. When you go to Scripture and you read in the Bible, God tells us through His written word that the church, that we are His bride. Okay? The church is the bride of Christ. So there are people who say, well, I am a Christian, but I don't have anything to do with the church. No, that's not possible. Because the local church is God's idea, by the way. He created it. Not only did He create it, He said, this is how I'm going to change the world. It's the local church. We are a local church. Lindsay is helping missionaries build local churches in Africa. I mean, whatever missionary you're talking about, their goal is to build a local church wherever they're at, because the local church is the bride of Christ. It is God's idea, and it is how God has said we're going to change the world. The church is really, really important. Because where else do you go to hear truth? Where else do you go for pastoral care? Where else do you go to be comforted and to be convicted? Where else do you go to be a part of something way bigger than you? And I'm just going to tell you, some of us, our biggest problem is that the biggest mission that we have in life is me. It's not a very big mission. And when I'm a part of the church, it allows me to be a part of something that's way bigger. It also allows me to be completely obedient to God. Now, Jesus went to church. And so did the devil. And the devil's going to take church and he's going to twist it. So he's going to take 2333 Canyon Retreat Drive and he's going to twist it. And this is how he's going to twist it for you. Somebody else will do it. That's how he twists it. Somebody else will do it. I'm sitting on a stage. You're sitting in a chair. Curtains, computers. There's a whole other building over there set up with all kinds of things. Signs out. You know how all that got there? Y'all know how all that got there? Somebody put it up. And I know why you come to this service. Because you won't even have to take it down. Somebody else will do it. Somebody else will watch the nursery. Somebody else will put the chairs up. Somebody else will put the chairs out. Somebody else will buy the coffee. Somebody else will greet. Somebody else to teach my kid. Somebody else to do it. So here's your yes or no question. Now, if you're visiting this morning, or if you're trying to figure out this is your church, you don't have to answer this one. But for the rest of you, you got to answer. And here's the question. Are you serving your church? Yes or no? Guys, your wife serving doesn't count. Ladies, your husband serving doesn't count. Are you serving? Are you volunteering your time in some shape, form, or fashion for your church? Yes or no? I want you to write that. I want you to write it down. Yes or no? Now I want to help those of you. For the many of you that say yes, thank you very much, excellent. You're doing a great job. Keep doing it. For those of you that have said no, I want to help you. I want to help you take some baby steps. In the back of the church, in the back of the room, there's a thing, and Miss Pam will be back there. We've got 5 things, 5 ways for you to serve. And none of them require you to do something every week. They're baby steps. For instance, one of the things on there is to set up. We need about 25, 30 men on that list. There's only 10 on there, so we need to fill that up this morning. We need to turn it over, and we need to keep writing. If you are a healthy, able-bodied man, and you don't sign up to come pick a Sunday, if we will all do our part, if we will get past somebody else will do it, and we will all do our part, about 6 times a year, we're going to ask you to come give us about an hour on Sunday morning and help us set up. You'll get an email saying it's your week, and you just come and do it. Because right now, we have 2 or 3 people doing it, and we're getting really tired. So we need some help. And here's why else you need to help. And there's greeter stuff. The stuff that we're about to be doing, we're going to need to triple our greeters. There's all kinds of things to sign back there. Only 5. Didn't give you the Cheesecake Factory menu. We went in and out menu. Just a few things there. You pick it and you write down what it is that you can do. And again, it's not every week. Okay? Here's why this is so important. Because you need to be needed. Do you know this? Do you know that you need to be needed? See, one of the reasons so many people have a hard time connecting with the church is because you're not doing anything. So guess what happens when you're not here? Can I be real honest with you? When you don't do anything and then you're not here, guess what? Guess what happens? Nobody notices. Because you weren't adding any value. And I hope that you know that. If you're going to be a true disciple of Jesus, you've got to be in a place where you're adding value. You need to be adding value. And when you're not adding value, you need to fix that. Dads, we need to model it for our children. Jonas is sitting over here. Jonas, could you raise your hand? Jonas comes every Sunday morning, 7 o'clock, and he brings his 2 boys. Combined age of, 11, 10, 15? A combined age of 15? They're young, they're little. The bulletins that you have were stuffed by them this morning. They're stuffed, the bulletins that you get every week are stuffed by them every Sunday morning. And Jonas is modeling that for his son. Eric's in the back. Eric brings his boys with him. He's modeling. Dads, we got to do that because we're losing. Millennials, we're losing. The thing that keeps teenagers plugged into church when they're in their 20s is that they served when they were young. And it's really hard to say, son, don't smoke. Right? It's really hard to say, son, you should serve when you're not. Third one. By the way, the first two were easy. 2456 Blair Castle. If you'd write down 2456 Blair Castle. 2456 Blair Castle. Put a picture up, a satellite picture up of our area. Way down here in the corner is where we're at. Shirley and Bill Wallen Elementary School are right there. You see the Starbucks and the Albertsons are up there in this corner. So this is 2456 Blair Castle Street. So if you live up here, for the past couple of years, you've driven by up and down this road many, many times. And if you don't live up here and you just come up to church, like I do, come up on Sundays, you've driven past 2456 Blair Castle Drive. In fact, anybody live on Blair Castle Street? We got anybody in the room? So we have some church people that do live on Blair Castle Street, 2456 Blair Castle Street. And this is why this is so important. Because a gentleman was discovered in his home at 2456 Blair Castle Street a couple of weeks ago. And he had died. And he'd been there for 2.5 years. Just a couple of weeks ago, they found him. So you've been driving by his house for 2 years. Now, that's not all on us. But some of it is. Did I mention we're losing? We're losing. There's not a whole lot I can't buy on Amazon. But I cannot buy friendship. Amazon can't sell me community. But we can. That's the one thing we got. That's the one thing that we got. It's friendship and community. So this is an incredibly important address. We're surrounded by houses all over the place. So we've got some improvements to make. And I just want to list off some of them. One is we need to have a discipleship strategy. We need to have a clear and concise way that you can say, hey, here's how I'm taking my son through this, or I'm going through. The fact is that most of us in the room have never been discipled. You've gone to classes, but you've never been discipled. And if somebody came up to you and said, hey, whatever your name is, I just became a Christian, I need you to tell me what to do next. Other than go see Pastor Marty, you don't know what to say. But that should be different. Because the command Jesus gave the disciples, he gave to you. He just didn't give it to pastors. He gave it to you. If you're a Christian, he's told you, he's commanded you to do what? Y'all are not convinced. He's told you to do what? So we need a discipleship strategy. We have to enhance this room. We've got to change some things in the room. We've got to improve some things in the room. About 5 years ago, we started off, we spent about $90,000 to get all the church stuff, all the portable church-in-a-box stuff. It's 5 years old. It's 5 years old. It's been set up and tore down a bunch. So we've got to enhance some things. And here's the cool thing. The PTA of this school contacted John a couple of months ago and said, hey, we'd like to give the church some money. Kind of. Well, let me preacher it up a little bit, okay? It didn't exactly go like this, but similar to this. This is based on a true story. Okay. Yeah, this is based on a true story. Basically, long story short, the PTA in the school wants to make this room more suitable to have productions for their choirs and all those kind of things. So They want a permanent soundboard, not one we have to put up and put out. They want to run through the wires through the building so we don't have to lay them on the floor. And we're going to hang the speakers instead of on these wobbly things. And we're going to get new screens and all of these kinds of things to enhance this room. We got to do way better in a lot of the stuff that we're going to be doing. And so we've got some teams that are working on that. And the PTA has raised some money, and they're going to give almost $30,000 towards that. Isn't that amazing? Now, the initial bid to do all the things that we want to do in the room cost $125,000. So you can woof now again, right? Okay. Because this stuff's expensive. And so we're investigating what all that looks like. So we need the room to fit when someone who lives in this area comes in. We're excited that the Wildcats are here, but we don't necessarily want to see it during worship. And we're excited it's a 5-star school, but we don't necessarily want to see it during worship. And so there's things that we need to do to help enhance the room. This is a big one, and we need to add a pastor to our staff. And we're talking about what that's going to look like, and we'll talk about that more when it gets closer. We need to create an invite culture of letting our neighborhood know that we're here. And we need to do a lot more picnics. We need to do some really cool, amazing picnics, because we have some cool, amazing parks. And everybody who lives up here likes going to the park and being outside. So we need to rock this world with some picnics, like some real picnics. And so we've got a team working on that. And we're going to be doing some of those things. Now, Jesus went to church, and so did the devil. And when the devil goes to church and you hear 2456 Blair Castle, the twist is this: it's not my problem. 2456 is not my problem. So this question, I've got a little setup, and I'm running out of time, but you got to stay with me. This is going to be a tough question. And you're going to go, that's got nothing to do with what we're talking about, Marty. That's a dumb question. So here's the question. Do I tithe? Yes or no? Now, before you answer the question, let me just define what a tithe is. A tithe is not giving money to the church. That's an offering. A tithe is when you take 10% of your income and you give it to your church. That's a tithe. All kind of biblical basis for it. We'll have a teaching on it sometime if you want. If you want to go have a cup of coffee, we'll sit down and we'll talk about it. I'll show it. This is not a tithe. You take your check and you take 10% of it. Let's say your check's $1,000. You probably need to get another job. Let's just say your check's $1,000. So a tithe would be how much? $100. Once? Like if I give $100 once, is that a tithe? No, it's a tithe is when if I make $1,000 a check, I give $100 every time I receive a check. That's tithing. Okay? I've really tried to find it in the Bible where it would say you should tithe unless, and it has something after it. But that word unless, I can't find it. It's not in the Hebrew or the Greek. There is no unless. It doesn't say tithe unless you're having financial difficulties. It doesn't say tithe unless you don't have the job you want. It doesn't say tithe unless you have kids in college. It doesn't say tithe unless. It doesn't say any of that. God just says, here's tithe. You're supposed to give it. We have to rent the school. That takes money. My family has told me if I cannot provide for them living inside, they're leaving. That takes money. Equipment takes money. goldfish that your children are snacking on in the back take money. The office that we rent takes money. And I hope you don't have this in your heart. I hope you don't say, Marty, I can't. Here it is. Somebody else asking for money. And if you're part of our church very long, you know I hardly ever do this. Hardly ever. Do you not go to the grocery store and fill up your grocery bag and say, I cannot believe this grocery store is charging me money for these groceries. Don't they care about my well-being? All this grocery store wants is money. You don't do that. You don't go stay at a hotel and say, I cannot believe they're going to charge me to stay here tonight. I mean, don't they care about me? Don't they not want me to sleep on the street? I cannot believe they're asking me for money to stay in this hotel. You've never thought that. If you do, you need some help. But you know what we do? We do that at church. Marty, don't you care about my well-being? Don't you care about my soul? It seems like you should care way more about that than you should about whether I'm tithing or not. The answer to that is yes. And a tithe is how you take care of your soul. Because it's one of the basic tenets of the Christian life. I've asked 3 basic questions. I'll wrap this up. I've asked 3 basic questions this morning about your home, about your church, and about your wallet. And here's what I know. You're not going to open up your home for spiritual formation, and you're not going to open up your time and your ability and your talents to help your church be better, and you're not going to open up your wallet until you do something. And that is until you open up your heart. You must open up your heart first. You have to open up your heart. I have to open up my heart and I say, okay, God, you are what I'm pursuing. God, you are what I'm pursuing. And this is what I want you to hear. Please get this. Because I'm not sure you're pursuing God. I think you're pursuing security. I think you're pursuing good kids. I think you're pursuing guilt relief. I'm not sure you're pursuing God. How else do you explain our blatant disobedience to the basic fundamentals of Christianity? Stay sexually pure. Tithe. Go to church weekly. Pray. Read your Bible. Love your neighbor. These are the basic tenets of Christianity, and we don't do them. Somehow or another, we think we're the exception. God's going to turn his back on my disobedience and bless me every time I do something right. What are you pursuing? Are you pursuing God? Because in order to pursue God, you have to open up your heart. And if you'll open up your heart, the things that we've talked about this morning aren't a big deal. They're not a big deal. Now, let me say this. You can have family devotionals in your house every night. You can volunteer in 14 different ministries at church, and you can tithe 20% of your income and be full of evil. I've seen it. Some of the people who write the biggest checks to church are the most godless. That's called guilt relief. It's not called pursuing God. So you can do all of the things that I've talked about and not pursue God. But here's what you can't do. Now listen, this is what you can't do. You can't pursue God and not do those things. You see the difference? You can do the things and not pursue God. But if you're pursuing God, you're going to do those things. You're going to take care of your home. You're going to take care of your church. And you're going to be obedient to God. Especially in the places that you have the most fear. And your bank account is the thing you fear the most. That's why God says, trust me with that. Test me with that. And I'll prove to you. Only thing he says that about in all of the Bible. Jesus went to church. So did the devil. Who are you worshiping? Would you pray with me? Father, I pray that you would help us. Father, I pray that you would help us to celebrate the fact that you love us and to celebrate the fact that you've said, hey, I believe in Anthem so much that I want a healthy and vibrant and growing church in our neighborhoods. And Father, thank you for all the things that have happened. Father, thank you for all the people that we've baptized. I thank you for all the people that have made dramatic steps in opening up their heart to you. And Father, the room is full of those stories. And Father, I thank you for them. But Father, I know this. I know that you didn't call us to status quo. You don't call us to a certain point and then say stop. You always want us to get better. Father, help us to be obedient. Help us to be obedient to your word in our home. Help us to be obedient to your church, to your bride. And help us to have a heart and a passion for the lost. So, Father, we don't want Blair Castle to be the norm. Father, give us a vision and a heart for the things that you want us to have a vision and a heart for. In your name we pray. Amen.